Hi everybody, welcome to Shouting From The Sidelines. I have got a real treat for you today. We've got John Farnworth with us, who a lot of you listening to this will already know, but John's going to introduce himself in a second. His career is unbelievable. I can't even put into one sentence what he is anymore because he does that much. But John, amongst other things, is and has been a world champion freestyle footballer. He's a television host. I'm not going to do it justice, so I'm going to let John introduce himself. John, thank you for coming on. So for anybody that doesn't know, if they've been living under a rock for the last few years, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Oh, thanks, Luke. Great to be here. Well, most people do know me as a football freestyler, which is, obviously my main career and has been for many years. So, yeah, I've sort of, in the past, I've won quite a few competitions. I've become like a world champion at football freestyle, European champion. And the past few years, I've been focused a lot on different world records, doing different things with the ball. So a couple of the notable ones would be crossing the Sahara while juggling a football. I climbed up to 6,000 meters of Mount Everest while juggling a football. So that's been my life for the past 15 years. But as you mentioned there, the past sort of 2-3 years, I've been doing a lot more media work. I present a show called Match of the Day Kickabout. And I've worked on other shows like Jamie Johnson as a choreographer and also an actor. And I've also worked on a show called Can You Kick It, which is a CBBC show. So some of the younger listeners might have seen that. We did 2 series of that last year. Obviously, things have been put on hold at the minute with the virus. So, but yeah, it's been a busy few years, but everything I do always revolves around the ball and freestyle and football. So it's always an honor to sort of, work with the likes of you, Luke, and sort of hear what you're doing. So great to be here.
Good, thanks, mate. Yeah, we're going to come on to some of your challenges shortly because they need to be spoken about in more detail. You need to do them more justice because they are unbelievable. Some of the things that you've done and records that you've broke. So we'll come on to that a little bit later, and all the charity stuff, obviously, as well. I was keen to get you on, John, because I want to talk to you today about practice and obviously the support you've had from your parents and so forth as well, for our parents that are listening. But we were talking off air about practice and about how for a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old to just say go out and practice means absolutely nothing, really. And it's something that I'm guilty of saying. Every parent listening to this will be guilty of saying, just go and practice, go and practice. Well, practice what? How do I practice? What should I practice? Yeah. And you are a case in point of, sticking to a timetable and practicing certain things to get to where you have done. And in this case, this was, a freestyle football world champion. And again, we'll talk more about that shortly. But can you tell us a bit more, John, when you were a child, when you were a kid, what practice looked like for you? What sort of timetable, how many hours, the things that you did and so on?
Yeah, so for me, I got into football when I was about 9 or 10. I only came across freestyle when I was 14, 15. So I went to a soccer school, Brazilian soccer schools, which obviously you're aware of, Luke, in Leeds at the time. And it sort of started to grow into Manchester, which isn't too far from me. And I started training there. And before that, I loved football and I still love football. But at that point in my life, I got a real love for the ball more than anything. And that's what led me to freestyle. So for me, it was like seeing other children that were way better than me. I saw that as a challenge. And I saw it was starting, YouTube and like the internet was starting to grow. So I started to become aware of like what was possible with a ball, and not just doing kick-ups. There was like skills on the ground you could do. There was like, you could balance the ball on your head. And I remember seeing a guy called Mr. Wu, who was one of the most famous. He's the pioneering football freestyler, came from a football background. He was a player, got injured. He played at a good level in Germany, actually, but he sort of took the world by storm because he was the first footballer that could do amazing tricks and skills, and he'd go around all the big football stadiums. And someone sent me a video of him just juggling a ball with his shins, with his toes, with his heels, with his back. And my friend was like, this is fake, like this isn't real. But I sort of realized that it wasn't, and this guy had actually trained super hard. So after seeing that, and with the influence of the soccer school which Simon set up, I just got hooked on training with the ball, and it was like this intrinsic thing. So at the time, I didn't really have many goals. I just I enjoyed training with the ball, and it was like, right, this is the trick I'm going to learn. So I'd focus on one skill. So one of the first skills I learned was to balance the ball on my foot, flick it up and catch it on my neck. And that took me hours, weeks and months to perfect. But what I would do as a youngster would be, nowadays there's so much, it's very crowded, but back then there was probably 2 or 3 tricks. So I'd learn a trick and move on, but I would master it. I'd find real sort of enjoyment in the mastery process. I don't know why, I've just always been drawn to that, to the actual practice itself. And as that started to develop, freestyle started to actually become a big part of my life. And then when I was 18, 19, I sort of had to make that decision whether I was going to do something else, whether I was going to continue playing football, and because I still played football at that time, or was I going to take one thing really seriously? And that one thing to me, even though it didn't make sense as a career at the time, was freestyle. I just loved it. So I just started to then schedule, I started to think, right, if I was a footballer, or even when I was back at school, I had like lessons to go to. I'd go to maths and then English and then science. And then at the end of that year, I'd take an exam and I'd either pass or fail, depending on how well I'd practiced or trained. So I approached freestyle like I did at school. And I sort of set myself a goal. That was the first time in my life when I set myself a really big goal, quite a scary one. And that was to win the world championship. And that was impossible to me at the time. Mr. Wu, who inspired me, was the main guy, but there were loads more upcoming freestylers at that time, and ones that are now quite famous because of YouTube and social media. So I kind of took it seriously, trained every day to a schedule. I got up earlier, and I just thought to myself, if I train more than everyone else, surely I'll win. Football's a bit different because there's other things to consider, like outside here, but freestyle, luckily, because it's such an individual sport, you're only going to let yourself down if you don't train. And I quickly realized that. So yeah, it all came from an intrinsic want to learn. I was never pushed into it by my parents. In fact, my parents quite often told me to rest. They were like, get inside, you're going to do your body harm. But I was just fascinated with the ball. I was fascinated with what was possible. And after seeing various videos, I was like, that's what I want to do, because it gave me that feeling of like seeing almost like magic, or seeing something that just blew your mind. Like that's what I wanted to give and pass on to other people, because that inspired me. So yeah, so that's my journey in a nutshell, in terms of like how I got started and how I approached my training. And even to this day, like I schedule my day very meticulously. Like my morning, I always have a set routine, and I don't want to go like way into it and bore people, but I do think that like you do need routine, you need habits. Like I say, it's a crowded world. So if you've got habits, if you're training at this time every week, at this time every day, then you'll do it. And I think you've got to love it as well. Like I said earlier, like I was drawn to the ball for whatever reason. I was drawn to freestyle. I still am. And it fascinates me every day. So yeah, I think once you find that, the rest does take care of itself. But you have to like keep on it. You need to do a little bit every day. And a lot of people, with training and stuff, they'll say like, how much do you train? But I think it's more about consistency rather than the amount, because you could do like 10 hours, be like, whoa, I've done 10 hours, but then you might not do it for like a week or something. I always think it's better to be like consistent over a long period of time. And it's baffling what you can achieve by doing a little bit every day.
100%. I think there's some massive takeaway points there for any child that's watching, or any parents as well that's listening as well. The COVID situation, I remember at the start of this whole thing, the kids were all making these color-coded timetables of, right, I'm going to do, I think it was like Joe Wick's PE at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm going to do maths and so forth. There's a lot of hours in a day, and take off the time sleeping and so forth, and look at how much is left. All right, I've got school for that amount of time, but I get home here. I can take the easy way and I can go on the Xbox for 2 or 3 hours, or I could do half an hour to an hour of football training on those nights, or aside from my other training that I do for my team or whatever. And it's so simple that people, I just don't think they believe it. But when you said that about the consistency, that if you do that for a month, it becomes a habit. So then all of a sudden 6 months flies by, and after 6 months, you're going to see a difference. And yeah, it might not be that they want to be a freestyler, but you went out and said, right, I'm going to practice balancing this ball on my foot, and then I'm going to get it onto my head. That's the trick I'm going to nail first. It might be that a kid says, well, yeah, I'll do that because I can master some football. Or it might be that they go out and say, I'm going to hit the crossbar from 20 yards out 10 times in a row. Yeah. And, that's them working on their long passing as an example. Yeah. And David Beckham's a great example of that consistency, when he used to go out with his dad and be hitting free kicks, and he had to hit a certain corner, then he had to hit corners, and he had to hit a certain part of the penalty spot or whatever else. And this is the thing, this is why I was so keen to get you on, because what you do, and for anyone that's listening that's not seen John yet, you probably will have, but go and YouTube and go and Google him. Some of the things that you do are mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. But it all started with that one thing, thing of you learning that one thing to master, and then it went off from there.
You can apply that to anything. And just one thing while we're on that, Luke, with the training, I think it's important now more than ever to not compare yourself to others and compare yourself to how you were yesterday. So in your class, like you might be the worst. Like I was never the best footballer in my team. I was never the best freestyler in my soccer school. I wasn't. But I think one thing I've learned over the years is to just better yourself every day, because not many people are willing to do that. And that's a very tough person to beat in anything. And once you have that mindset of not comparing yourself to them or this player or that player, how many goals they scored, how many assists they've made, how many skills they can do, just try and better yourself each day. Just try and go an inch more each day. And like we were saying, consistency of that over a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year. I think sometimes when you look at the wider picture, then you think, well, actually, I can do anything. And I've used that. And a lot of this was taught to me by Simon Clifford, who set up the soccer school that I was part of. And he had this philosophy about training. And I think he was, so ahead of the game in that. But I've just applied that to everything I've done, whether I've been like hosting a TV show. I've just gone back to me being a kid, practicing with the ball. Like when I first started hosting Kickabout, I've never been on a course to learn to present, but I was willing to like ask for the scripts, to learn them, to work on my voice, to try and model other people. And then when you realize you can learn that skill, you don't really have fear in the world. You just know that you can learn anything. And like COVID hits, you're like, okay, it's not great, but how can I use that time? That's going to free up a lot of time for people to master something. And it really is a choice. Like it's the whole dead time or alive time thing. Are you going to use your time, or are you just going to lay around watching YouTube? Or, I know what I decide to do, and everyone's different, but that's just my opinion. And I think, there's so much opportunity right now. It's insane.
It's the old like sets and reps thing as well, isn't it? If you go to the gym, you do X amount of reps for X amount of sets to build muscle, or X amount of time on the running machine or whatever. I think when you break down a particular skill, anything you do, whether it's hosting a TV show or becoming a world champion freestyler, that's the thing, isn't it? Right? I'll do one more than I did yesterday. I'll do 10 minutes more than I did yesterday. And like you say, just competing against yourself. Because you and I, when we were at Garth of Town together way back, can't believe it was like probably 15 years ago now. That sounds mental. And even then you could see that you had a drive for the ball. You loved the ball. When we played in those reserve team matches, it was like you want the ball, and then you do like 6,000 step overs before it comes to you and stuff. And and you could see that desire. But even, you know, at training, you'd be there before, you'd probably stay a little bit after, and you do these things on your own. And it's that makes a difference, I think, and that consistency. And certainly from my experience as a kid, like yourself, I was probably one of the I was sub all the time at school. Never really played in the starting 11, but I just kept on going, kept on practicing. I ended up playing higher than a lot of the players that were in that school team. You know, didn't make it pro or anything like that, but I played to a high standard just from working and continuing to work. And it's rubbish when you think you're not good enough, but if you can go and get out of your own head and just go and compete against yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's. I think most people in the world do themselves a disservice with what they believe they can do, and like, you know, I've always sort of going back to goals. Goals are important, and it's that fine balance, isn't it? You need inspiration. You need to look at the top players in the world, like your Messis and Ronaldos, but the chances that they've got there because of the work. So if you're like a 9-year-old looking at Messi thinking, oh, he's amazing. Yes, he's amazing. But why can't you get there? Why not? Like, there's, you know, someone's got to, haven't they? So why not you? And if you think about it and schedule your time and be mindful of how you train, you know, why you train, even down to like what you eat as well. Like, I think for me, like I still, even though I'm not competing in freestyle, I'm still training a lot in freestyle, but I'd still sort of treat myself as like an athlete with like what I eat. And I try and sort of give myself the best chance of being the best person I can in every little bit. And yeah, that's exciting because there's always things to improve on. And that's part of life. You know, you're never going to be perfect, which is actually very beautiful.
Yeah, definitely, because it'd just be boring otherwise. Going back to Ronaldo and Messi, I mean, some people think that they're just aliens, and you know, it's just ridiculous what they can do. But I remember listening to it was Carlo Ancelotti when he was at Real Madrid. His assistant manager, Paul, I forget his name. Anyway, he was with him at PSG and Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, I think. And he was asked about Ronaldo, and he said, there's no secret to why he is like he is. He's there before everybody else, and he stays after everybody else. There's been so many players and teammates, former teammates, that have spoken that he's just, what he does is, it's not magic. He just works harder than anybody else. And this is Ronaldo at 34, 35 years old, could retire for 6 lifetimes. Yeah. But he just wants to keep getting better and better. And he's 5 Ballon d'Ors, 5 Champions Leagues, or whatever he's got. He's just won his he's just won the Serie A for the 2nd time. It's just that work. It's that practice. Yeah. And it's just, there's just no secret.
He sacrificed everything, hasn't he, to become who he is. Like, even the fact that he doesn't drink, he doesn't have tattoos and stuff. And it's a real credit to his like mindset. You know, there must be so many temptations, especially when you're at that level where you've got all the money in the world. You can have pretty much anything you want, but for whatever reason, he's got this like intrinsic drive to become better at that age. Like, he's won everything, hasn't he? Like, absolutely everything.
But then
World Cup, but yeah,
you think about, you know, parents listening now, it might be, well, I'm unsure whether or not I want my child to go all in on a particular sport and then dedicate their life to it and then end up at 16 being released by an academy. Thanks, but no thanks. But you think about those softer skills that will be developed as a result of this drive and resilience that's built up and things like that. That's going to help you so much when it comes to the real life, the working world. And, you know, I think there's a lot of ex-sportsmen that end up going into, you know, very, very good jobs and being very good at those jobs because of this attitude that they've got to work and the resilience to deal with failures and so forth. Whereas I think if you've not had that and you've not been involved in sport, that can be harder to develop, particularly when you get a little bit older.
But even going back to like when we were at Garforth, Luke, the sort of training that we had, a lot of those lads have gone on to, they might not have all been footballers, but they've gone on to do incredible things. Like we were speaking about some of them, and like that ethos, that training, like I know that like when I was training there and like that heaviness of what we went through, like that set me in such good stead for when I went into other things, you know. I agree. I think it's always character, always the character like that. Once you've developed that, you really can like put your mind to anything. You become a hard person to beat, if you want to put it that way.
Definitely. I think Simon Clifford, I'm hoping we'll get on the podcast at some point. He's he's a guy that we both know very well and way ahead of his time in terms of youth football development, but a conversation for another time, definitely. But
Yeah.
he was a big proponent of fitness as well. And when we were at Garforth, I have never been as fit in all my life. And you know, when you get into that point where you feel sick because you've sprinted that much in pre-season, I think anything that I've done since work-wise, you know, in my career doesn't come close to the pain that I felt that night. So it's like, yeah, just bring it on now. This is easy. I'm not saying kids that you need to go make yourself sick by sprinting, but I'm saying his experiences in sport have helped, you know, develop this mindset, I guess. John, your parents, we were talking before about you were on when we were at Garforth, I think it was, you were on calendar, and your parents were proudly looking on at you in the garden. You're probably in the middle of a 6-hour training session or whatever, and they were just saying that, you know, they're so proud of you and they just support you. If you want to do it, you do it. And that's what I wanted to ask you now was, how did your parents support you to get to where you have, and would there be anything that you might do differently if and when you have children?
Yes, I mean, my parents never ever pushed me. I think I had that obsession with the ball, and that's what drove me. But they just sort of guided me and helped me, and just sort of quietly were there for me. And as I grew up and started like my own business and stuff, and then I sort of moved away from them, they'd just always be there to support, and they never pushed me once. And when I think back, I think if I was pushed into anything, I'd have probably, because I'm quite sort of, I like to be my own person, I'd have probably like gone up against that and sort of dig my heels in and gone the other way. So I'm so grateful for that. I think they could recognize within me that, you know, when I was in my teenage years and starting to train freestyle, they could just see that I had that love for it. And I think they wanted to give me the best chance for me to follow that, even though the career path wasn't very straightforward or even mapped out. I mean, I didn't really know how I was going to make it work. I just loved what I did. So I think that really helped me, knowing that they were just going to support me. And there were a few times that, you know, I remember like my dad saying, like, you know, you're about to leave college, like what are your plans, or, you know, how are you planning to sort of approach the next years, and that made me think. And, you know, so they always like put things into my mind and like guided me, but they never told me what to do. They always supported me. And like also, like when I was growing up, I had so many disappointments. Like when I started to get or try to get really good at freestyle, like a lot of earlier competitions that I entered, I never won them. I'd sort of maybe scratched through, and I was meeting people that inspired me, which was the main thing. I mean, I did all right in some of them, but it wasn't all like plain sailing. So it was just nice to know that like I had a family that supported me as well, and also like kept my feet on the ground. And Simon's always been a big part of that. We spoke about, like, if it wasn't for my parents and it wasn't for those around me at that period of time, I don't know what I would have done, or I don't know how my sort of life would have gone, because you do need the right people around you. And I think there's a saying, isn't there, about you are like the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Without you knowing it, your subconscious mind picks up on things. And, you know, people have written loads about it, you know, even the science of that, like who you surround yourself with. Like, I think if you're in a certain environment, you sort of by osmosis become that environment, whether it be at school, whether it be who you train with, whether it be your friends. Like if all your friends play Xbox, not saying it's bad to play Xbox all the time, but if all your friends play Xbox and eat pizza and drink Coca-Cola, then the chances are your willpower is being tested there to really like just do that, and you'll become that. But if that's not what you want for your life, you might want to think, well, how can I surround myself, even by watching people? Like if I, going back to Ronaldo, if ever I watch Ronaldo or like a documentary about him, it's like I always think to myself, I can be a bit better than what I could live a bit better. I can. So nowadays, because there's so much information, it's like how we filter that, and it's how we surround ourselves. For me, I surround myself, I read a lot of books, like a lot of people that have inspired me in my freestyle career and sort of outside freestyle have come from like books, videos, people. And I think if you know what you want and where you want to be, and you know, for kids, you don't always know what you want to do or be. You probably love football, that's great, but as you get a bit older, then you start to like have to think about where you want to be. That's important. I found that hard to begin with, but when all was said and done, I just did follow what I felt was right in my heart, and that was initially freestyle, and it paid off. So.
Brilliant. And I think we ask that question every time we have a guest on about how their parents supported them. And I think the key word is support. All these people that have gone on to be successful in their chosen field, they were guided, and you use that word guidance. It's something that as coaches as well, we're not there to give the answers, we're there to guide them. And there's this whole thing at the moment, particularly in football, about how you get a lot of joy sticking, as it's called. So parents do it, coaches do it, where you're telling the child all the time during a match, do this, do this, do this. They learn nothing. You don't go into a maths classroom and start telling your kid the answers while they're in school. So why are you doing that on a football field? It's guiding them, asking them questions. Because you know yourself, you don't learn anything from being told. You learn when you've actually done it. And you get the answer yourself. And so that guidance there that you're saying from your parents, as opposed to saying, do this, do that, that's probably helped you. Well, it certainly helped you on your journey.
Do you know what's interesting about that? I read something, someone passed it on to me. I think it was about the learning curve. And apparently, right, that the fastest learning curve related to like sport and like skill acquisition was the environment of a skate park. So no parents, no coaching, just like doing a trick, fail, get up, doing a trick, fail. And that environment of like maybe a few people that are better than you, a few people below you, and in this community. And that's what freestyle's become. Like the levels of freestyle now are absolutely ridiculous. And I for anyone listening and watching this, if you just go into YouTube and put in like Red Bull Street Style, Super Bowl, which is like our world championship in our sport, and you see some of the tricks and skills that are possible. And those guys don't have coaches. Like they're a community, and they're bouncing off each other. And it's similar to like in futsal, where it's very organic. Street soccer would be another example. Like a lot of those players that came from the street soccer environment, they had guidance tactically, later on. But I do believe that a lot of that, what would be quoted as like natural skill, was formed in an organic environment. And when you like mix those two together, I think that's like the perfect balance, like chaos and order, like you definitely need that. But like the whole like pointing your finger and like constantly on top, that's just like I mean it's like creating rules that are not needed a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It makes it too robotic. And when it becomes too robotic, then nobody enjoys that mechanical side of it, I don't think, anyway. No. I think it's about enjoyment, fun, and learning, and sort of progressing organically as well as the other stuff. So it's important.
That's it. I mean, the street football thing is something that's dead. It's died, unless you go into a specific football style session that is done in that way. And as a nation, I guess we've not really benefited from that, because you are getting now a few more. I mean, we're making very good players now, but I think there's still some things missing. And I think it's that game intelligence, which, like you said, comes from playing in that environment where there's lots of chaos. You have to move your head around all the time to see where you are and see what's going on. And it's something that certainly in our line of business, one where, you know, parents pay for their children to come to us and be coached. It's really hard for some of them to grasp why we do things the way we do it. And our view is that we will coach them for a certain part of the session, show them things, guide them through it. But then the matches at the end, we try to stay silent. Silence the wrong way, but we try to, be enthusiastic and almost commentate, you know, and keep the energy levels. But we try not to stop it. Whereas you go to some grassroots football and it's like, everybody stop, stand still. Now, and if football were meant to be taught like that, it'd be taught in a classroom. And that's a quote from Nick, our co-founder. You know, he's very passionate on this, and it's so true. But it's hard for us to balance what we know is right with, that parent's watching over there and I've not said anything for the last 30 seconds, so I better open my mouth and make a coaching point. It's just a bit of a nonsense. But I'm hoping now there's going to be a shift and let them play. Just let them play. Yeah, guide them, show them some stuff, but, you know, let them play.
That's it. It comes out. I'm always baffled by how creative, like, I mean, everyone has levels of creativity, but I do believe we're all creative in some shape or form. But kids are so, like, creative. They learn fast, aren't they? And like the more you sort of knock that out of them, I think the less progressive we become as humans. And then again, I think that's in a lot of things as well. Definitely. You know, like progressions in any field were made by not following the strict rule in the box. It was by thinking a bit abstractly, thinking about different things. And it might be weird to begin with, but you know, it progresses and becomes the norm eventually.
Definitely. We trialed some stuff at one of our camps. I think it was last year, and for half an hour with each group, we selected somebody to take the session, a child. So, right, you've got half an hour. You've got to come up with we told them this at lunchtime. They had to come up with a session at lunchtime while they're eating the lunch, and then they were going to deliver it to their group. And we probably took more from it from a coaching perspective than we've done with most football coaching courses, because what we saw was leadership skills coming out. There was like a hierarchy. So this one player was giving jobs to the other players to do. It might be get the cones or whatever. And some of the stuff they were coming up with was brilliant. And how much opportunities do children have to do things like that in their life, which let's face it, is probably that's probably going to help them more in the future than some stuff they're doing at school. And those things, those ability to lead a team, to think of something on the spot, and all these little softer skills. And it was absolutely fantastic. We've said we're going to do a lot more of it.
Kids love that as well, don't they? It
might get to the point where we just say, right, from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m, we'll go have a cup of tea. But no, it was really, really good. John, I've got a quick one. Well, I don't know if it's a quick one for you, but I was keen, and I imagine a few of the kids might be keen to know this. What is the hardest skill you've had to learn, hardest skill you've learned, if you could describe it?
Yeah, I always say the hardest trick that I've ever done, it was for a video I did a few years ago, and it's not the type of skill that I can do over and over, and it involves a few different things. So it's basically one of my favorite tricks is like you have the ball on your neck, you know, when you back your little up and it comes over. I always love that trick because of the perception and the control needed. But I decided I wanted to try and combine that with a backflip, because I started playing gymnastics, and again, like trying to think outside the box. I was like, what can I bring into what I do that maybe no one's doing or would actually work? So for me, that I always say it's the hardest thing, because the process, it took me a year just to learn a backflip. And then once I learned the backflip, it was like, how do I mix that with the flip and then catch it again, which can take many attempts. But the process of learning the backflip was so challenging for me, because I was scared. I was scared of like jumping up and going backwards and sort of flipping. And, you know, obviously I didn't want to break my neck or get injured. So I had to approach that very slowly and not rush. And, you know, I didn't want to injure myself. So yeah, just getting over that initial fear of doing the flips and stuff, that was a big thing for me. So that was a very difficult skill, and I you know, I wanted to do it for one particular video, and it took me 1 year just to even attempt it and then try and do it. So sometimes with freestyle, it just honestly, it's demoralizing. Like it's such a good teacher because it teaches you not just the skill, but like the patience. You know, you can go out, do a skill, and like one of the other tricks that I managed to just about get was it's called a Jordan stall. You basically do a soul balance, like where you balance the ball on your soul. A lot of kids will have probably seen it done, but to do that in a handstand, so you're kind of in a inverted position in a handstand while balancing the ball. I've managed to do it. I've not mastered it, definitely not mastered it, but again, that took me like 3 or 4 months just to do it once in a video, and I'm still like trying to do it. But some tricks you can get, and you know, it's cool, like you move on to the next thing, and someone's just so difficult. But like say, it's a good teacher for like patience and perseverance. And yeah, like I say, I've sort of tried to use that same approach in other parts of my life, and it's definitely helped.
So there you go, kids. After this, you can get off and try and do a couple of bad flips. I remember when we were at Gaff, I was doing some coaching for the Brazilian soccer schools up there, and I think you were doing some filming. I think you were doing some filming for one of the DVDs, and I've walked with the kids past those. Remember those little Astro carts that they had?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were brilliant then. Yeah. I walked past those, and all these kids have seen you, and I'll never forget it. You were doing skipping rope. You were skipping rope and heading the ball while you were doing that. And I mean, that's probably one that you could do now, eyes closed and everything else. At the time, I was thinking, wow. And all these kids turn around to me and say, are we doing that today? Are we doing that? Whoa. Listen, I'll teach you how to slide, tackle, and head. That's as much as you'll get from me. But yeah, unbelievable stuff. But yeah, guys, if you've not seen John, I'm not going to say too much now, but we're hopefully going to get him down again with us to do a few sessions. But please YouTube what he does, because it's motivational as much as anything. It's amazing. You and I, John, you more so than me, but Nick certainly, our co-founder, he obviously did a lot of the Brazilian soccer schools, and the big thing or the little thing was the ball. You know, this ball that Simon had brought over, and heavier, a lot like the, you know, futsal's a sort of a different thing now. It's a bigger ball and so on, but this one was heavier, tiny. I think it was a size 2, and that, you know, that certainly helped everybody from a skill perspective, and you could master the ball. But the question was, did that help you with your mastery of the football? And is there anything else since that has helped you get to where you have done?
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That changed my life, if I'm honest, because with the football de salon ball at Brazilian soccer schools, that was completely alien to me when I first started, and it really helped me get my coordination better with my feet. And actually, because freestyle was so difficult with that ball, my mind was always like, well, if I can do a trick with this ball, it's because it's so much easier with a big one. So I think that's what gave me a bit of an advantage when I was getting started. And I used to train with that ball that much that even my first shows that Simon had me do, like, because all I knew was the size 2, I'd even do like full shows with a size 2 ball. I probably couldn't do that now because I'm so used to the big one, but that helped me. So when I took freestyle more seriously with the traditional ball and the size 5, yeah, it was honestly like, it was a joke how many more like around the worlds I could do, like everything it enhanced. But going back to like, you know, the present day and stuff I've used, it's a tough one really, because it all comes back to the ball. Like with all my learning, I try and figure out what I'm going to do, and I try and break it down, and then, like we were saying, do those little things and just have like confidence that it's going to work in the end. So for example, that handstand trick, I would just do learn a handstand, with a crash mat, you know, that might take you a few weeks or months or even years. But if you do want to do it, it's just what you got to do. And then you put the ball in. So I think what I've become all right at over the years is just sort of breaking down a skill so I understand it, even though my brain doesn't understand it yet, doing those little bits and then trying to like stick them together. So with my challenges, a lot of it is fitness based, where I'll mix in, like I'll be doing like loads and loads of maybe running or weight work on my legs to improve that. So when I was training for the Sahara, because I didn't have that much time to train because I had a lot of engagements to do, I would do maybe 1 or 2 heavy days, which doesn't sound a lot for something that big, but on those heavy days, I really went heavy. So rather than just do like my training on the sand with the ball just up and down, I would put like weights on my back. I'd be carrying kettlebells. I'd do something to make it so much harder. So then when I took that off, it felt like I did maybe a week's training in one day, or a week's worth of training. So yeah, I'm always after things like that where I can work smart. You know, like we're saying, there is only so many hours in a day, and it's like how you use those. You know, you can train an hour mindlessly and you're not going to get good at anything, but you can train for 10 minutes with like laser focus and probably achieve as much, if not more, than that hour. And where I'm at now with my time is that it's like, how can I be more efficient with my time? Do I need to train 12 hours a day, or could I do that in 2 hours, but be like, bang, phone off, no distractions? So that's what I'm trying to figure out now, is like, how efficient can you be with time, with training, and with the goals as well.
Yeah, interesting. It's the smaller ball. The FDS balls. We insisted on them for our 2 youngest groups when we started about 6 years ago, because we knew the benefit of them. They've stopped making them. They stopped making them a while ago, I think, which is disappointing, because I think they were great. They were great for kids, because particularly younger ones, they have a habit of just blasting the ball, and those couldn't go that far. I think the futsal ones are slightly lighter than they were, so you know we can get them, and they only come in size 3s, I believe. So yeah, it was it's disappointing to see them sort of come to an end, really, because they were, and I have seen the first hand the benefit of those.
Because it was Mitre, wasn't it, that made them? And I know a lot of the brands such as Adidas and Nike have really, Puma maybe, have sort of taken over the football. So yeah, it's a shame, because I think if every kid had one of those balls to train with, even for 10 minutes a night, you know, doing some of the footwork stuff, I do believe that would help massively for technical development and also physical. Like, I don't know if you remember like the FDS games, that, you know, you're so tight because it's full on, very fast, very rapid. But again, going back to that, creating chaos for development, there's no better environment for that, I don't think.
Oh no, I think there's some studies. I don't want to get too deep into this because it's only exciting for a coach, this particular part. But I think there's some research in Ajax that has gone into looking at how children can use a bigger ball but lighter. So it's a lighter ball, so they can kick it as they would want to kick a little ball. And then when they come to get to the point where they're using the size 4s and 5s, they're more comfortable with it. I don't know. I don't know the findings, but it's something that Nick and I have kept an eye on, because we were thinking of trialing it and seeing what we believe the smaller balls at the younger end, definitely it's a big plus. But then also throwing in smaller balls with the older kids every now and again and just varying things, it's a good thing to do. Yeah. John, you've met a lot of footballers, professional footballers, and I've seen videos of them, and they just can't believe what you're doing, even though they're professional footballers and you're doing it. It's like jaws are dropping. Who's the best? Well, in fact, just tell us maybe 3 or 4 players that you've met, and then tell us who's the best you've met.
Good question. Well, I'd say, a few of them that I've met, and I've worked with them all on different things, some longer than others. So I was lucky enough to meet Ronaldinho, who was one of my heroes. Neymar, again, another Brazilian legend and hero. who else that? Well, I have met a lot, so I'm trying to think. Like Juan Mata, I interviewed Michael Carrick. Thomas Muller, I did some stuff with. Spent a lot of time with him actually just before the new year. Who else? Back in the day, we did the stuff with JJ Kocher. Did some stuff with Mikel Antonio a few years back, who's obviously now he's doing well, isn't he, at West Ham?
Yeah, really well.
I'm trying to think really, but yeah, I've been so lucky, and yeah, a lot of the players I've met now, or I'm meeting now, is a lot through Kickabout. So I'm more like Raheem Sterling. Actually, I did an interview with him. So yeah, every now and again I'll get the chance to like meet a player, whether it be from freestyle or even just like speaking to them. But I love doing the Q&As with them because you get to ask them some good questions. You know, I really like tease out why they're so good. But in terms of being the best, I think Neymar, from a freestyle perspective, I reckon he's probably the best freestyler out of the footballers.
Better than Ronaldinho?
Probably not Ronaldinho. I'm trying to think of like current day. I'd say Ronaldinho trumps all of them, maybe followed by a Kocher, like a JJ Kocher. Even though he wasn't like a Brazilian player, but if he was in the Brazil team at that time, he would have maybe been like world player. Yeah. And when he was at Bolton, he was a joke. Like he was doing like rainbow flicks in games, but he was efficient with it. He scored goals. Like he was an incredible footballer. But yeah, I think for skills, like freestyle skills, so, you know, some real iconic tricks like around the world, hop the world, Tuzani around the world, some of them quite technical. And Neymar actually said, because before I met him, I read his book because I wanted to like figure out a bit more about him and, you know, about his life. And he says in his book that he watches a lot of freestyle on YouTube to inspire him, you know, to think up new tricks, new skills. So when he's at home, he can just always be with the ball. And I found that super fascinating, how freestyle is such a big part of the traditional game. So for that, him. But do you know who surprised me? He was an amazing footballer, like loved playing with him. It was Thomas Muller. Obviously a world winner, he's done everything, but yeah, he could do some good tricks, you know, like around the world. He was like popping them off left, right, and centre. Such a cool guy, but the way he struck a ball was fascinating. Like we did this challenge, we had some fun, did some freestyle and kicked the ball around, and then at the end we were hitting these targets, and I was like all over the place. Muller was just like bang, bang, but he wasn't just like chipping it; he was like full on knuckleballing it. It was a joke. I was laughing. I think he thought I was laughing at him, but I was just laughing at how consistent he was. And it makes you realize like what it takes to be a player of his caliber and how consistent he is. But it was just fascinating to like watch his approach. He was so relaxed as well on the ball, and he's not really known, is he, for like his skills and his like sort of expression. But he scored some goals, and when I spent that time with him, I was hugely impressed with him. Such a lovely guy.
I think he's known more for his intelligence, isn't he? His runs that he makes and things like that. Yeah. But he's a very, very good footballer. German efficiency and all that, isn't he? He just gets it done. Going back to Ronaldinho, for any children listening and watching, I can't even describe the guy. He made a lot of myself and John, our era. He made a lot of us fall in love with football. Him and his partner, Brazilian Ronaldo. So please go and Google those two, Brazilian Ronaldo and Ronaldinho, and just sit back and enjoy, because that era of players, you think about those two, you think about Zidane, Figo at the time, and any of the Real Madrid players really, and the old Nike advert with the 3v3s in the cage and stuff. It was such a brilliant era of football, and please kids, go and Google Ronaldinho and just some of the stuff he did. But what's really interesting, what you just said there about Neymar, is that you know there's winning and there's losing in football, but there's also that winning in style. And I think Neymar is probably case in point. Frustrating player for a lot of spectators some of the times, but Ronaldinho, the way that he played and won, was just probably what you'd want. I guess you look at like to Messi and Ronaldo now as well. The way that they play the game, it's just so exciting to watch and interesting to watch. And Ronaldinho did things with the ball on the field against the world's best.
Yeah.
that were just mind blowing. Getting standing ovations at the Bernabeu and all that sort of stuff. Just
I remember, like, the kids are honestly, like, I can only just repeat what Luke said, because he was doing it at the top. Like, do you remember his elastico?
yeah.
You knew it was coming, but the way, because in Brazil they call it ginga, don't they? The way you move, it's like it's not just doing the move. There's like a style and like cockiness to it, and he just had this like way of moving. He was strong. But he also played with a smile on his face constantly, like, and that had a real lightheartedness to him that, yeah, he sort of epitomized football. It is what you should be, like, entertaining. Like, you should work hard and express yourself, but you should also have fun and also enjoy the ball. And if things don't work out, there's worse things that can happen. So just keep on going, you know.
Definitely. John, we're near at the end. I wanted to ask you about your challenges and give some info too, because going back to what we've said, you know, you were obsessed with football, you loved football from a young age, and then you've ended up out of that, forging a career where football is your career, just not as a player. But then on top of that, you've decided to break numerous world records and do numerous challenges. Raising money for charity as well. It's amazing stuff that you do. So, like before, you were saying you climbed up part of Mount Everest, juggling a ball. You've gone across the Sahara, juggling a ball. What's the hardest challenge you've done so far?
That's a good question. I think the 3 endurance ones that I've done over the past 3 years, they've all equally been tough. So Everest was for the altitude, so we went up to 6,000 meters of the mountain, which was incredibly tough. It was like 9 days, 12 hours a day with a lunch break, basically kicking a ball up a mountain. Just the experience of being in that part of the world where not many people get to, and there are dangers in that, you know, territory, but it was amazing. Like, Everest will always like sit in my heart as, like, because that was one of the first big challenges that scared me to death, which is part of the reason why I did it. And I did it because I unfortunately lost my granddad, who like got me into football and very massively supported me in freestyle and always gave me good words of advice, and that's what got me on this route of doing the challenges. So when that all happened, I was like, well, what can I do that's like challenging? And everyone talks about Everest. It's just, the word Everest means challenge. It means doing something that you can't do. It means going beyond your current capabilities. So that's what got me thinking way bigger than I had previously. And then off the back of that, we did the Sahara. Again, you know, there was no altitude with the Sahara. In fact, a lot of that, you know, it does go high, but it's sea level, if not below. But you're just in the hottest place you've ever experienced, and sand isn't the easiest surface to kick a ball in the air across. So that was tough. We did that one over 7 days, and then more recently, feels like a lifetime ago now, but I can't believe that was this year, we did Lake Baikal in Siberia. So Lake Baikal is not as famous location wise, but it's the deepest lake in the world. It's the biggest lake in the world, and the oldest lake in the world. So it's 25 million years old, and for 3 months of the year it freezes. So my plan was to, within 48 hours, cross from one side of the lake to the other, which is 80 kilometers. So essentially doing a back-to-back marathon across ice. So I managed to do that, just even though I had a very bad injury. I picked up an injury along the way because of the endurance of it. So it's hard to like pick up one that's like the hardest, but they've all had like different elements of them that have been difficult for different reasons. So yeah, Everest was the altitude and terrain. Sahara was the terrain being sand, and Baikal was just the distance in the time, but also it was -20, which isn't so yeah, all different parts, but there's more to be done, and I enjoy the adventure of it, and all of these challenges I do for charities, which is really nice to do something that I mean, I do them anyway, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to do something like that for good causes. It feels like an amazing thing, not for me, but for them, you know. So
what's next? What have you got up your sleeve?
So my whole year has been, you know, it's been shuffled around an awful lot. So my plan was actually to do Death Valley next, but I don't know when, how. I don't, you know, Death Valley obviously is the hottest part of the world. Not many people have crossed it, certainly with a ball on foot. So that will be my next.
All Death Valley for a reason, John.
No, I don't. So in all honesty, I was prepping to do that in September. That's clearly not going to happen now because of the prep needed and also the sponsorship needed and stuff. So yeah, I'm sort of hanging tight, to be honest. So when everything starts to die down fully, I feel that I'll be raring to go. But I've got a few ideas. I think I always try and think of new things, different parts of the world, different terrains, and different challenges, and it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, brilliant. It's brilliant. Well, you know where we are when it comes to your next challenge. We'd love to sponsor you again because it's.
You guys have been a massive support. Thank you.
You're welcome. John, I know how busy you are. I know it sounds silly because we're all at home at the moment, but you've still got a lot going on in terms of the TV stuff. So I'm going to leave you to it. Thank you so much for coming on. So much to take away for kids and parents there and coaches. So we'll look forward to inviting you back up to see us soon. And just before we go, John, so people can check you out and also see what you're doing charity wise next and things. Where's the best place for people to find you?
So a lot of my challenges that I've done, the sort of bigger videos, are on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is just my name, John Farnworth, but my daily videos and content is going out on Instagram and TikTok. So my big focus at the minute is TikTok. I'm doing a lot of short form videos, a lot of editing, spending an awful lot of time on that. So yeah, if anyone fancies checking out some of the regular stuff I do, you just put my name into any of those platforms and you should see me.
Brilliant. John, thanks a lot, mate, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you. Cheers, Luke.